Thanks for tuning in to the C-Suite Cyber Podcast, brought to you by Watchdog Cyber. Join us as we explore the critical intersection of business and cybersecurity, helping you protect your company, your customers, and your reputation. Whether you're a CEO, a CFO, or hold any other executive role in your company, the C-Suite Cyber Podcast is your go-to resource for staying ahead in today's digital age. Hey everyone, it's Dan and Aaron again with Watchdog Cyber. We're coming to you today to talk a little bit about October. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and Dan and I are going to be doing quite a bit of activity this month. We've got a lot of social media posts lined up. We've got some videos that we're planning to share daily with you with some tips and tricks. And today we're going to kind of go over some cybersecurity myths. We've got 12 of them that we commonly run across. Today we're going to go through 6 of them, and we'll finish up the next 6 on a later podcast. Dan, do you have anything else to add to that?
Nope. Just excited to go through this stuff. Like you said, it's things that we hear all the time. Why somebody can't do something or what they're thinking it might be. So just want to put some clarity on these myths, and looking forward to Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's going to be a lot of information with that too, and looking forward to doing a little bit more video snippets. I think that'll be helpful. Hopefully people will be engaged with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess, first and foremost, let's kind of define what cybersecurity is, and why is it the backbone of many businesses?
Sure. Well, I think cybersecurity is it's becoming a buzzword, and I think people hear it and they're like, oh yeah, and it's really bad, and I think they don't really understand what it is. It's really about protecting the data. This is not, it's risk management for the business, protecting your reputation, finances, and it is not about IT, and it's not about hardware. And this conversation really stems with the leadership of the business. So, I mean, that's my explanation of it. It's not hardware. It is a risk mitigation conversation. It is tools that could be put in place to protect the data. There's policies and procedures that go along with that, and some of it kind of spills over into compliance. That's how I define it.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the easiest ways is, right, it's people, process, and technology. There's no silver bullet out there that solves your cybersecurity issues for your business.
Right.
I think you're absolutely right. It's around risk mitigation and risk management. And it's far too often thought that that cybersecurity is more of a technical issue than anything else. Mm-hmm. So I think over the next few slides here, we'll start debunking that thought process, right? Where cybersecurity is just an IT issue. It's nothing more than that.
Right.
So
yeah, this will be good.
So Dan, myth number 1 is we're only worried about external cyber threats. Why is that short-sighted?
Well, there's people are looking for data, right? There's money to be had if you've got someone's data. And sometimes you could be working for a boss that you don't like, or a company that you don't like, or you become disgruntled, and you start siphoning off some of that data, or you use that data to leave and go somewhere else, and you think you're going to be able to call on those people. You have to protect your data. And I know there's a lot of different ways of doing that. We had a conversation yesterday with the school and talked about, locking down the thumb drives on laptops and different devices. And, there's ways to do it. And sometimes I think, the feedback we got was that it was, they thought about that. Sometimes they think it isn't going to happen. right? Which I think that's why this is a myth. They think it's not going to happen, their people won't do it. But it happens, and it is something that's real. And I think if you're in a business that's a financial advisor or a CPA or healthcare, I mean, who knows what could happen? Someone could take that data and sell it off.
Yeah, and obviously, everything you just said is for an employee that is vengeful and just disgruntled and unhappy with their workplace, right?
Mhm.
But the other side of the coin too is that, we're all human and we all make mistakes, right? And so in our everyday part of working through our jobs, do we make a mistake and do we send an email that contains PII or
Right.
credit card data or healthcare data or anything that's sensitive in nature, right?
Hmm.
And did
Hmm.
we do it in a secure way? Did we encrypt the email before it went out? Are we sharing it via a secure link that has an expiration date? Like how is it being shared? And if
Right.
it's being shared unsecurely, right, that also is qualified as an insider threat.
Right.
So it can be very much intentional or it can be absolutely unintentional.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, uh, folks inside your walls do pose a threat to the business.
Right. Well, like you said, it's a mistake, right? Somebody puts some information on a laptop to give to another person. They lose that thumb drive, right? They leave it at uh, a coffee place, or they leave it somewhere. It falls out of their pocket, their purse, whatever. It just gets lost, and then somebody else picks it up.
Yeah. I mean, you've got that. You've got, we all are living in a world where either it's still a work from home type situation or
Hmm.
we're moving back to more hybrid. Um, so you get people that, they like to work from a coffee shop or they like to work while on the road, and so
Right.
are they doing best practices? Like if they're at the coffee shop and they've got to use the restroom, are they locking the device? Are they taking the device with them? Are they leaving it unlocked sitting on the table that they were just sitting at? Right? It's the same thing
Right.
like, all right, well, on my way home, I'm going to stop at the grocery store and they leave the laptop sitting on the front seat.
Hmm.
For anybody that's walking by can see right into the car and say, oh, and uh if it gets broken into, are there proper things in place on that machine to prevent the data from being stolen? Right?
Right.
Is the machine encrypted? Does it have is it password protected? So on and so forth.
Right.
So these are all things to think about, from an insider threat standpoint. Um, and it's definitely again your threats are not just external anymore, they are absolutely internal.
Right. Right.
All right, so the next myth is probably our favorite.
Oh, yep. This is a good one. This is a good one.
My organization is too small to be a target.
Yeah. Well, I go to a lot of businesses and talk to them, and I hear that a lot. And especially for companies, I mean, even with 30 or 40 employees, they think they're too small. Um, but you're not. And they're a bigger target because cyber criminals know that those small businesses are not making the investment into it, tools to protect themselves. Um, well, we just had 2 weeks ago, we got a call from an attorney's office. They have three attorneys and one secretary, and she called and said, I think the one of the owners' email was compromised, and we went in there. You went in, found that it was compromised, and they had put a rule in there to divert emails from a specific email to a different folder, mark it as read, and they were about to transact a six-figure transaction, and um, they actually called and said, "Why did he send us this email to change the bank information?" Which that never happened. So she was alert enough to call us, and we were able to go in there. You went in and found it and fixed it for him. But the kicker of it was, remember, he's a big Michigan fan, and his password was Ohio sucks exclamation point. Now, although that's true, it's not a password, right? And it's just crazy that to hear that. And that was again 3 attorneys and 1 secretary. That's a very small office, and they were about to do a 6-figure transaction that potentially could have gone by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean this year alone, we've helped 3 solopreneurs that
Right,
have gone through incidents.
right,
So yeah, I mean, being small, yeah, absolutely is not a that's not a shield, right? Um, Being small just means that you likely don't have the budgets, you don't have the resources to actually protect yourself
hmm
from today's digital threats, whether that's somebody, hitting your firewall from the outside or somebody that's sending you bogus emails.
right,
Um, if you're not doing any type of awareness training for the things that you're up against and you don't have some technical controls in place and you don't have a process of what to do when the stuff hits the fan, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure when the time comes.
right. Yeah,
And I,
for
I think
sure.
it's important to harp on that, right? It's not if, it's when, right?
Right,
Everybody is going to go through it at some point.
right.
Um, and they just, there is no discrimination as far as the size of your organization or you as a
Mhm.
person. Another thing that comes to mind is, last week we took 2 phone calls from
Mm,
consumers, right? And
right.
one of them was an elderly woman in her 80s. Um, she called very panicked, and she had mentioned that she was surfing the web, and she had one of those pop-ups come up that said, your computer's infected, call this number, blah blah blah.
Mm,
So she picked up the phone, called the number, gave whoever it was remote access to her machine, and they stole all of her information. They stole her credentials and her passwords. They accessed her bank account, and they made some transactions and moved um, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 out of her
yeah,
accounts.
that's crazy.
So she called us, looking for help. Like, what do I do? And we were able to give her some tips. Um, but again, this just goes to show it doesn't matter who you
Right.
are, how big you are, you're a
hmm
target.
Right. And they're not always looking for millions of dollars, right? They're looking for 10,000, 5,000, $2,000,
Yeah.
right? They're not always looking for these big hits. We see those in the news. We don't hear about these small things that happen, but they're not always looking for millions of dollars.
Well, and why is that, right? This is something we talked about during our golf outings with folks, right? We had a stack of some prop money,
Right.
and the bottom line is, your 3 biggest countries for hacking are China, Russia, and Iran, right? Those are kind
hmm
of the big 3 players. Um, the average household income out of those 3 countries comes out to be somewhere around 12 grand a year.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody that's making 12 grand a year and you can hack a small business for say 10 to 20,000, how many of those small businesses do you need to hit to
Right.
really have a significant impact on your future financially, right?
Yeah. Not one will do it. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy that they don't need that much, and people don't. I don't think they know that, which is why we're talking about it, right? They don't know that that's how it works. That's why they think they're too small.
Yep. All right. Our next myth is antivirus software, or any single tool for that matter, is enough to keep me protected.
Yeah. Well, um, I think that just goes back to there's going to be another myth that this would tie into, I think. Um, but antivirus itself is not going to protect you. There's too many changes that are happening on a daily basis, the malware that's coming out. the changes that they're making in the malware to get by all this stuff. Antivirus knows it only knows known viruses, right?
Right.
So how's it going to know the new stuff? It doesn't. And people aren't updating software the way they should, typically, especially third-party software. So it just can't keep up in the real world. I don't think, and I think people just don't know that, right? They think they can load something and leave it alone and they're protected. Um, there's too many variables out there right now. When you see phishing emails coming in, just uh, there's too many variables that people can get information from, right? That's why we talk about passwords. We talk about multi-factor authentication, right? And as the size and complexity of a business is really going to dictate some of those higher end tools, but you have to have, like it says, a multi-layered approach. It's like Swiss cheese, right? If you had one piece, there's some holes in it, but if you keep stacking slices on slice and slice another slice, those holes go away, and
Yeah.
it's kind of the same theory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the other analogy that usually hits home for folks is, when you protect your house, you don't look for just locks on your doors, right?
Right.
You want locks on your windows. People are putting Ring doorbells in. They're
Hmm.
putting external security cameras up. They've
Yep.
got fences. They've got lighting. They've got dogs. They've got handguns. Got baseball
Right.
bats. They got
Right.
everything, right?
Right.
So
Right.
why wouldn't you do the same thing for your business?
Right.
Right? Why would you just rely on one thing? Why would you rely on just antivirus or just a firewall? Right?
Right.
Those were effective 25 years ago at
Yeah.
protecting a business.
Right.
But today's threat landscape, you need, like you said, you need the multi-layer approach.
Yeah. I think, like we said at the very beginning of this, right? Cybersecurity is becoming a buzzword, and people, I think they're finally starting to um, want to learn a little bit more about it. I know our conversations have gone up tremendously in the last 90 days. The
Yeah.
number of companies that are reaching out to us, the ones that we're talking to, because I think they're starting to kind of see more and more of these attacks in the news. It's more often, they're seeing repetitive attacks, and I think they want to figure out what's going on with their own environment. So that gap between leadership and IT it's got to close a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. All right. So our next myth, phishing scams are obvious and easy to spot.
Hmm. Yeah, well, um, I think everyone can say that myth is probably deteriorating. If you went back 2 years, 3 years ago, you saw grammatical errors, misspellings, just very bad graphics or no graphics. Nowadays, with AI, there's no grammatical errors anymore. There's no misspellings. The logos and the emails that are being impersonated are just they're spot on. When you look at it, it's scary how close they can be. And I think part of it too is this goes, I don't mean too technical, but when you're spoofing someone else's domain, like that is just that's got to get fixed too, right? We talked to a lot of companies about that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the phishing scams they're not easy to spot. The place we met with, the school we met with yesterday, I think they said they were what 4 to 5%. They had a hit rate, which they want to try and bring that down. And I agree. That's too many people. Um, I think it worked out to like 200 people that were clicking on phishing emails.
Yeah.
So, it's just one of those things that they are hard to spot. You got to have good security awareness training. You got to have good simulated phishing attacks. You got to train people.
Yeah. I mean, with the advent of generative AI, things have definitely gotten more sophisticated, and it's going to continue to grow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it's not as hard as people think, or at least I think how they think, right? Um, when Chat GPT became a thing, I said, all right, I'm gonna do some playing with it. I want to see if I can't get it to write me, a phishing email, right?
All
And
right.
so if you ask it simply to write a phishing email, it's gonna say, no, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that, right?
All
It's
right.
gonna give you the computer response of, I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Right.
But if you just make little tweaks to the prompt that you're giving it, right? And so I made the tweak to say, hey, I'm a cybersecurity researcher. I want to do a small phishing campaign against a company in manufacturing. Um, and I want to do it from the standpoint of a CEO, reaching out to their staff. And then you could go to LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever and start grabbing some of the posts posted by that person, right? To just kind of get their tone
Right.
and chunk it in and say, I want you to use these five social media posts to try to get the tone of the person that would be writing this email. And as you're building that prompt, right, you're teaching it kind of who that person is so that
Mm-hmm.
when you do craft an email, it should be pretty close to their voice.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, if your domain is not set up properly, setting that email to spoof the domain to make it look as authentic as possible, um, it definitely ramps things up. So
Yeah.
phishing scams being easy, yeah, like you said, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
uh, today and moving forward, it's going to become a lot
Right.
harder.
Right. So, um, I'm sitting there kind of laughing that now our millions of listeners know now how to go and do what you just told them to do. Now they're going to start hacking everybody.
Yeah, I guess I should put a disclaimer on this one, right? Of everything I just said is for educational purposes,
Right.
right?
Here's how you do it.
But I mean, really, right? Like if you can stop for a minute and just put yourself in a threat actor's shoes, right? And think about what would they do to get to me or get to my people?
Mm-hmm.
And that is step one in building out a successful cybersecurity program for your
Right.
business.
Right.
You can't protect against what you don't know about.
Right. Well, the thing too, like what you just said, you're talking about protecting your business. Sometimes, the previous myth about being too small of a company, if that small company is a supplier to a larger company, like you're talking about protecting yourself. Well, now you got to think about now your client, right? A small business typically has 20% of its customers bring in 80% of the revenue.
Yep.
If you're the path into a larger company, how long will they stay with you? They may dump you right away. Like there's
Right.
so many of these different layers again that come into play that people are just not thinking about. And you may go, well, we're too small. No one's going to come after us. Why would they fish us? Because they want to get to something bigger. You're in their way, like, or you're their avenue into that other company. So, just another. It's all kind of starts to tie together after a while.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that's a super important piece to bring up, right? Is everybody is a part of everybody's supply chain, right?
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you as a small business, you are absolutely potentially a gateway to a much bigger fish.
Yep. Yep.
All right, myth
No
number
pun intended.
myth number 5. More tools means better security.
Uh, it's just funny. I know you use the term a lot, like shelfware, right? We talk to companies like, oh, we have that. We've talked to a company before, and this kind of plays into that, but uh, their insurance person told them they needed security awareness training, so they went and bought a security awareness training package and never implemented that. Now, that's not maybe not a lot of tools, but I'm just wondering how many of those tools are being bought and maybe they get installed, but they don't get set up correctly. So they go, well, we got to have this. Well, we got to have this. Understanding how these tools work and they have to be managed, they have to be monitored, so the cybersecurity piece of this is its own entity within a business. It can't just be lumped into the IT bucket and thinking they're going to do that. Knowing what these tools do, and we see it when you do a great job vetting out our security stack because there are some tools that are starting to expand what they can do. So just because you keep buying these tools, now you got a bunch of overlap, it doesn't mean that it's better, right? And it can't go unmanaged. I think that's a bigger piece of this with more tools.
Yeah, I know we often, when we talk to folks, we kind of use the analogy of, when it's around tools of, well, listen, I'm glad that you've got all these tools, right? But we liken it to, I want you to build me a curio cabinet, right? I want it to be
Right.
something fancy, something for my china set at home, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're going to tell me, well, no, I can't. And I said, well, hold on, hold on. I'm going to give you all the lumber. I'm going to give you a table saw, circular saw, drill. I'm going to give you everything you need to do it. Can you do it for me? And we often hear the response of, well, no.
Right.
And we always say, well, why? We're giving you everything you need.
Right.
It's not about the tools, it's about the strategy, right?
Yeah.
You have to think about your business as a whole. What is your risk appetite for your business? How do you want to mitigate the risk that you have? Um, Even if you want to mitigate the risk, right? You can only do four things with risk. You can mitigate it, you can avoid it, you can transfer it, or you can accept it.
Yep.
Um, and so you kind of have to go through that thought process first, um, before determining what your cybersecurity strategy is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think it kind of plays into cybersecurity as a buzzword. I think there's no real strategy. People were just kind of like burying their heads in the sand saying that my IT person's handling it. Um, or again, all these myths play into that, right? Well, I'm too small, or why would they come after me? It's just it all plays into it, and that's why we're doing this because we're debunking these things so that people can understand that they got to take a part of this.
Well, and obviously we use a bunch of cybersecurity vendors, right, as part of our
Hmm.
stack, but the vendors are part of the problem here, right? How many vendors are out there saying you can buy this one tool and secure all these things,
Yeah.
right? Um, Again, it's not the tools that do the protecting. It's a combination of
Right.
people, process, and technology.
Yeah.
Technology plays a role, but it is not the only role.
Right. Yeah. There's overlap, but it doesn't. It's its own separate thing. Cybersecurity is its own separate entity.
All right, number six. Cybersecurity is solely IT's
Hmm.
responsibility.
Well, this is a good one to end on. I'll just go back to our conversation at the school yesterday with their IT person and the superintendent. Um, the IT person there, I thought he was doing a phenomenal job. I mean, far and above what we've seen at other organizations. And it was and even the superintendent said, I knew there was more, and I know he can't do it all, right? And I think after our conversation, he really realized how much he had done, but he just can't keep up with it, right? Going back to
Yeah.
the last myth, right? You can't keep up with that stuff if you're the IT person, right? You need some help in there. And I think it goes I think it's just been I don't know what the right word would be, but they just sort of inherited cybersecurity, right? IT people inherited that responsibility. And unfortunately, they didn't fight for themselves to say, no, that's not what I do,
Right.
and it just has gone on over time. And now people are like, well, why aren't you? What do you mean? Isn't that? And so everyone's trying to figure this out right now. And I think it's a whole different skill set. Like when we talked about it in the very beginning, IT, the functional, the operational side of business, the infrastructure part. My monitor doesn't work, the server's down, I can't get on the internet, I can't print, I can't scan. Like these functional pieces of the network infrastructure are handled via the IT team, the IT support. Cybersecurity is about protecting the data. It's a completely different skill set. It's something that is more, it has to be more managed and monitored, and it can't, there's no way one person can do all of that. There's no way. With as much stuff as I see that we do for companies, I can't imagine putting all those responsibilities onto an IT person that's probably already overworked, right? And underpaid. And now you're saying you have to do all of this. And they don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
The majority, I'm not saying all, but the majority of them don't. And companies they got to pull their head out of the sand here and start to take part in this, strategy. Like understand a little bit more. What questions do I need to, as a CEO, what questions do I need to ask of my IT provider or my IT team? Like there's too much that's been pushed off to the IT team, and they're bearing the brunt of this whole thing.
Yeah, I think another thing here is, I think back to to our logistics customer that we have, right? Where they've got an internal IT staff. The technology director is our point of contact,
Mhm.
and he's on board. He's ready to make the investment to start securing the organization.
Right.
But it's leadership. Leadership is being kind of the pushback on that.
Hmm.
And so, as much as this guy is going to try to put in some type of cybersecurity program or put together a cyber strategy for the business, it can never be successful unless he has that buy-in from the top.
Right. Right.
Because if the leadership isn't going to do the things that he's trying to put in place, and they're not going to support him, well, what makes you think that the employees are going to follow suit, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
they're
Yep.
going to look at everybody that's above them just like we all do, right? We
Hmm.
all look for the influence of the powers that be, and I shouldn't say all of us, but majority of folks, right? They
Right.
look at the powers of be, and well, if they're not doing it, then why the hell do I have to do it?
Right. Right. Well, and I think too, you know, traditionally, most IT people, not all, are introverted, right? They just kind of want to do their thing, and they want to fix it, get a ticket, make the repair, the fix, whatever, resolve it, move on to the next one. They don't want to go and talk to people. They don't want to do these things. And that hurts them because now, like you just said, if leadership is pushing back and they're not listening, well, how many times can someone go to somebody with a a request or a solution and continue getting it pushed back? They're not going to keep going back and continue to ask. And especially
Yeah,
if you're introverted, right? So there's a gap in communication there. There's a gap in knowledge. There's a huge gap. So for all the CEOs and presidents that are listening to this, you got to sort of step aside a little bit and learn a little bit about what you should know with cybersecurity. I'm not saying you got to know how to do it, but know what you should know and work with your IT person and know that they need help. They need help. And if you brought somebody in like us to have that conversation, they would be they would be thankful. They would be like, "Oh crap, this is good. I really need this." And more oftentimes than not, you'd be surprised. They need the help. They're just afraid to ask for it.
yeah, I think that's so true. Um, I think I know we've talked about this in the past. Even is we often hear too, especially organizations that have internal IT departments, is that the IT manager or the IT lead or whoever that person is
Hmm.
often doesn't have a seat at the table, in management type meetings,
Right.
um,
Yep.
that's a big disservice, right?
Yeah.
If you as an organization and the leadership team, like you're deciding that you're going to move to, um, to a new accounting platform, or you're going to implement a new CRM, or you're going to do whatever line of business application that you need, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
You're just thinking at it from an operational standpoint, but every one of those things introduces some level of risk to the business.
Right.
Um, and there often isn't any strategy behind, well, what risk are we introducing? How are we going to handle it? So on and so forth.
Right.
So by having an IT person at the table, they might give a little bit different perspective in those types of decision making
Yeah.
processes.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely need to be involved more, especially in today's world. They have to be involved in those conversations. And I know that we talk to a lot of IT people. There's some good people out there. They know their job. They know how to do their job. They just don't know how to do the security side of things, right? And I mean, I'm not saying all of it, but you go back to the firewall and the antivirus and maybe a couple of things, but it's not their wheelhouse, man. It's always been, you know, hardware related, functional,
Well,
operational.
again, we go back to this logistics company that we just talked about, right? It's a team of three,
Yeah.
and the IT director, he has openly said multiple times, I don't have the talent on my team. I don't
Right.
have the talent personally. I don't have the time personally to try to figure this out.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense for me to try to figure this out. I would
Right.
much rather partner with somebody than try to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think he also realizes too that by partnering with somebody, he gets a deep bench rather
Yeah.
than just hiring a single person that is going to get sick. They're going to want to take vacation. They're going to want to do
Right.
all the things a normal human wants to do or go
Right.
through, right?
Right.
Um, and it's considerably more expensive to bring on a singular person or try to build your own team
Yeah.
uh, than to outsource it.
Right. Yep. For sure.
So, Dan, we just went through six myths that we often run into. Do you have anything that you want to add as a closing to this?
I'm ready for the next six. No, just kidding.
All right.
No, I think these are good. I hope this is beneficial. I know there's a little bit of insight in and around each of these myths. It could because of the conversations that we're having with IT people, business leadership. We're seeing so many different things out there, and we're just kind of trying to convey to everybody that more education is needed. You can't bury your head in the sand on this stuff, and don't think that what you're hearing is correct. You need to be vetted out for yourself.
Yeah, I think all of that is very true. Um, so that will wrap up today's podcast of the C Suite Cyber Podcast. The next time we get together, we're going to go over the next six myths and hopefully, again, continue to bring some insight, some things for you to think about. And until then, we wish you well.
All right, see ya.